I wasn't here earlier this week. What is this thing about drug testing?
No, there was an article released yesterday by Kevin Ioli, obviously in conjunction with Top Rank. There was an atypical finding in Artur Beterbiev's VADA test in December. Raised levels of HGH and testosterone. Not an adverse finding, but an atypical finding. But still raised levels, which is, you know, as a promoter of a fighter in the other corner, is a concern. So we've been working with VADA to try and understand the reasons why. It's all out there for your information to do your research, and I know they'll want us to be careful of what we say.
Did you get the satisfactory?
Not really. No. I mean, you know, there has been additional testing since, but not additional around those results. Just the standard testing that follows. So in this one test, there was a spike in these substances, and then in tests week after, there wasn't. What we want to know is, we're not scientists. We just want to know, why was those levels raised? And the questions that we've asked VADA, we will continue to ask. Again, important to acknowledge that contractually we can't do anything about it because it was not an adverse finding, but there was an atypical result on blood and urine of raised levels of HGH and
By how
testosterone.
much?
Yeah, what's the gap
Again,
between adverse
if you go on to that's what I don't like about it. For me, it should be one or the other. Do you know what I mean? It's either a test that's absolutely fine, or it's a positive test. To alert us with that information, we have to then look into that for the safety of our fighter. Do you know what I mean? And if you go to kevinioli.com, I think they've got all the results there from all the tests, so you can do your own research. And we're not scientists, but when you read it, you go, what the fuck? Do you know what I mean?
Have you spoken to Callum about it? What's his thoughts?
Of course. Listen, I was just pleased yesterday that the information came out, because we've known the information since the middle of December, but it hasn't been released. It's difficult to release the information because what they will feel is that Artur would, you know, people would accuse Artur. Again, I comment, it's not an adverse finding, but when there's raised levels of those substances, we cannot help but investigate further. We wouldn't be doing our job, and Callum's lawyer has been doing that with VADA. Again, we'd like a little bit more information.
Do you expect it before Saturday?
It's not going to affect the fight anyway, you know, because contractually, we would only be in a position, or the fight would be cancelled if it was an adverse test.
Well, it comes out now. Why did you?
Because one, because it wasn't our testing. Two, it's not our fight. Three, it's not our fighter. Four, there's confidentiality around the test. We wanted this information to come out because we wanted an open forum to discuss. And it got to a point yesterday where I think the information was going to come out, and there was a decision made to make sure that it came out first. Do you know what I mean?
But doesn't it come perfectly handy and very timely that it comes out like 2 days or 4 days before the fight?
I would have preferred it came out earlier, so we could actually have the chance to, you know, look further into it. Yeah, this is not an accusation towards Artur Beterbiev. This should be an open forum for us all to understand why. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And I'm a guy who, you know, if this was, we have a lot, you know, we do more testing than anybody in the sport, and we've had a number of tests, positive tests come up, and when it's our show or our fighter, we get questions, like a million questions. Why is this? Why is that? Why you? Why did this happen? Why? I see none of that, you know, so I'm asking the questions. And again, this isn't to point fingers at Artur Beterbiev. This is to understand more about testing. Why is there an atypical result? You tell me. It's natural, but a week later it's not there? I don't know. I don't know. You know, I just want to learn.
So have they said anything at all?
Yeah, there's been a lot of communication with
okay,
VADA,
cool.
but under their rules, there's additional testing that should ensue after.
Okay.
The additional testing that they talk about is just the testing of more tests that he passed with no atypical results. So,
Okay.
but that's, so my next question is, okay, so you did a test the week after, that was fine. Is that just how it works? 1 week you got raised levels, next week you haven't? Is that
So how many tests have there been since the raised levels?
I believe one or two. Yeah. But
And
this is,
obviously-
listen, this is questions that, you know, I'm answering these questions really as an away promoter, away fighter. And again, this isn't me saying Top Rank should have done this and Beterbiev should have done this. It wasn't an adverse finding. So we can't sit here and say, this is a disgrace. But of course, we were alerted. And when you read, as you will on that piece, you do look at it and go, Okay. And obviously, if you're Callum Smith, you know,
Yeah.
you need a team that's going to do their job to make you feel comfortable with the situation.
So what was the initial reaction?
What do you think?
Well, so have you heard that term before? Excuse me, atypical finding.
Yeah, it's, you know, we've been doing these testing. You know, there's been instances in the past when that's happened, and not really for these kind of substances or those kind of levels, but
It's just the difference between the two names. It's kind of it kind of sounds similar, but
atypical and adverse. I
Yeah.
mean, that, and I'd rather it was just one or the other. I don't really want
Is
something
it the
in
same?
the middle to say, just to let you know,
We're
it's
nearly
not
there.
a fail,
Yeah.
but there's a problem. I don't
Yeah.
want, you
Is
know.
it the same type of atypical result that the opponent of Oscar Rivas,
Dillian White.
Dylan?
No, because that was a result where he had an adverse finding, and he had to go through a process, a legal process, to present his evidence, and he was cleared, and the adverse finding was actually cancelled. There was no adverse finding. So before the fight, he went before a board of UCAD and had to give that information, and they deemed him as not guilty. I'm not saying Artur Beterbiev is guilty, by the way, at all, but I'm just saying when you read the information, for the naked eye, it doesn't read that well. So what I want to say to VADA is, okay, so just to give us complete clarity, you are telling me 1,000,000% that there is no evidence that this substance has been taken in an effort to produce to improve his physical performance in this fight. That's all.
Do you
And-
think
What's the difference between atypical and adverse?
Margin of error.
Is this like the levels are higher when
Yeah,
it's adverse?
I believe there's two tests that happen during that
We're all
process.
French
One-
here, so we might not see the
I think you
subtleties
should.
between
I
the
think
two
you should
terms.
speak to VADA, and you should speak to Top Rank. You know, because I'm the guy who's trying to find out that information. You know, I believe there's two tests that take place at the same time for a certain substance, and one is positive, one is negative, and this has got these levels, these have got these levels. But as I said, contractually, a fail is an adverse finding. So Artur Beterbiev has not failed a drugs test. What he had was increased levels of these substances in a test. But what we want to know is why. It's the same weather, but the same great restaurants, and it's a good place. You know, it's a welcoming place. I think it's a great fight. I'm here because we've been working with Callum Smith since his professional debut, but I'm here because I believe we're going to win on Saturday, and it's a really good fight. You know, Artur Beterbiev is a tremendous champion, very dangerous. He's also getting old. You know, there's also a little bit of pressure this week with many different situations, and I believe Callum Smith wins the fight, but it's going to be a very, very good fight, a dangerous fight, and a thrilling fight as well.
What's his biggest advantage, Callum Smith's?
I think that his boxing brain, his one-punch knockout power. You know, when he was at super middle, he was so drained at the weight. You saw the power a few times, but up at 175, you've only got to look at the Castillo win, the Bold Elite win, and they're not Artur Beterbiev, but they were unconscious. You know, one from the right hand, one from the left hook. And if Beterbiev makes mistakes in this fight, he will get hit hard. And if he gets hit clean from Callum Smith, he will be knocked out cold. And you know, you saw him when Beterbiev fought Callum Johnson, which was our other fighter a long time ago, who doesn't punch as hard as Callum Smith. He was, you know, he could have finished him. He was out from the left hook, and he's many, many years older now. And sooner or later, you know, even the yard fights, which Beterbiev was brilliant in as well, those fights catch up with you. The jaw injury, the controversy, everything is we like our position. Callum has been a little bit inactive, but you know, he's also fresh, very fresh fighter.
How big is this fight in England, in Liverpool?
Yeah, very big. Callum Smith is one of the biggest stars in British boxing. You know, he was the Ring Magazine champion, the WBA champion at 168 pounds. Fought Canelo Alvarez, but probably didn't do himself justice in that fight, but didn't, you know, very difficult to make weight. And he, you know, I think against Beterbiev, you can't mess around. You know, you can't come in here and fiddle around, try and survive, try and escape, try and box off the back foot. You have to be brave enough to exchange with him. And like I said, if he exchanges and he lands, the fight's over. That's how no disrespect to Beterbiev, but that is how I visualise this fight. A one-punch clean knockout for Callum Smith, and we believe it's going to happen. Signed for that fight already. You know, when I did the deal for Dimitri to fight Lyndon Arthur in Saudi Arabia, it came with another fight to do the undisputed. Obviously, Saudi have to do the deal still with Top Rank and Artur Beterbiev, but Dimitri Bivol was already committed to that fight. But we believe it's going to be Dimitri Bivol against Callum Smith. So we'll have to see. But certainly, if Artur was to win on Saturday, that fight is there for him in the Middle East.
So I know you said that you see Callum Smith knocking out Beterbiev this weekend, but do you see any possibility that Smith is also able to last 36 minutes with Beterbiev if he can't knock him out?
Yeah, I mean, you saw him last 36 minutes with Canelo Alvarez when he was really weight trained. But Beterbiev is a dangerous guy. He's got, you know, the most difficult thing against Artur is his work rate. You know, he doesn't let you breathe. I think Callum Smith has bigger one-punch knockout power than Artur, but Beterbiev is very heavy-handed and he throws a lot of punches and he wears you down. He hits you around the side of the head, the back of the head, the body, and you can't afford to take that for 36 minutes. You saw this, you know, against Alex Godsvik, very similar. You know, who was doing okay in the fight, but just in the end, it's like you just see a fighter as if saying, "I can't take it anymore." So you have to be aggressive. I don't think this fight goes more than 9 rounds, 8 or 9 rounds, because Callum will be taking chances. And he has to, you know, he has to throw when he sees the chance to throw. And there will be many chances. You know, you saw in the yard fight, Artur gets hit a lot, but he also has a good chin. But sooner or later, that chin just starts to wear away a little bit, you know, and hopefully it'll be on Saturday. And away from America, we live in this thing, it's called the world, right? And boxing doesn't just have to sit in the UK and America. Now, we know in Canada, but we know that it's great to have 10,000, it's great to have 90,000 at Wembley, but it's also great to develop new markets in the world that can actually make the fights. And the reality is that in the space of 5 months, we have had Fury and Garner, we have had Joshua Wallin and Wilder Parker and that huge card in December. We've had Fury against Usyk. We've had Joshua against Ngannou. We could have Bivol against Smith or Bivol against Beterbiev, all in 5 months.
But does that mean that all the big fights will only be available for millions of boxing fans on TV
around the world? This sport is a global sport. We've seen with our own eyes. I did the first show in Saudi Arabia, Joshua against Ruiz in 2019 in Riyadh. The difference now between the reactions from the fans and the knowledge of the fans, you have to give it time to grow. You can't just say, oh, there's no interest in boxing there. There will be, and there is continued interest. But also, if we're going to get the fights, we shouldn't just worry about the 10,000 people in the arena. We should be thinking about the world of boxing that's getting to see the undisputed heavyweight world championship. We wouldn't have seen that fight.
So like tennis, like golf.
But you know, anywhere where there's a lot of money being aggressive to make the biggest event is going to drive the sport there. But what we must do as promoters is make sure that our key markets and our domestic markets get serviced with big events. So what we mustn't do as Matchroom personally is just to take everything to Saudi Arabia. We must make big fights in Britain. We must make big fights in America. But, of course, at the same time, you imagine having a conversation with a fighter. Hi, you've got this offer to do the fight in the UK, or you've got 3 times as much money to do it in Saudi Arabia. But opportunities for fighters are important, but opportunities for the sport to make fights, like Bivol against Beterbiev, if that was the fight, you know, we can make it like that there. Do you know what I mean? Not months of negotiation and Bob Arum says this and I say that and then ESPN say this and the Zone say that and it falls through. Like made in 5 minutes. You know?
How much?
How much? A lot.
What makes you so confident overall? You've been quite confident.
I still think it's a 50-50 fight, but I see it. You know, I remember watching Beterbiev against Callum Johnson. I've watched him his whole career since then, and even before that. I watched him against Anthony Yard, and I just see a fighter that the opportunity is there to beat him. Doesn't mean you can beat. Doesn't mean you will beat him, but Callum Smith has a great opportunity to be in on Saturday. You've still got to go and do it. You know, just because he turns up, it's not gonna doesn't mean he's going to win. But I know he can win. Sometimes you make a fight and you think, I just can't see how.
Yeah.
Or a way. I see many ways to win this fight, and I can visualise it as well.
Beterbiev will be dangerous for Bivol.
Of course, dangerous for everybody. Dangerous for everybody. Great fighter, great pressure fighter, heavy punches, heavy hands, smart as well.
And do you think the fight will be to the end, or it's
I think it will end inside 8 rounds.
8 rounds?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Last question.